Today I want to talk about why I think no-code platforms are in serious trouble in this new age of AI. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at two platforms, one being Bubble and the other being Lovable.dev, which is a tool that I discovered a few weeks ago. And we're going to try to build a Calendly clone, or at least the user side of a booking platform, let's say, with a single prompt in both systems. And the point of this video is not to beat up on one system over another, because ultimately I actually think that both of these tools are going to run into the same problem. But instead I want to make a deeper point, which is that I don't think any sort of closed system, like we've seen with no-code platforms over the years, is going to win in this new age of AI-assisted coding and large language models. So let's dive into the demo. All right, so I'm inside of Bubble, and we're using their new Bubble AI Assist, I think it's called, which is their AI tool to generate apps from a single prompt. It's in beta right now, but they're slowly rolling it out. And we're going to use this prompt right here. It's quite short, so I'll just read it out. I want to build a scheduling platform like Calendly. To begin, I'd like to focus solely on setting up the booking page that a user will see. We'll need a calendar view where users can toggle between months and select available dates. When a date is selected, show a list of available time slots for that day. Selecting a time slot should display a form to collect the user's name and email. Okay, pretty simple. We're restricted by the character limit here, but for our purpose, I think this is perfect. Now, I've already generated this app, and let's dive into the Bubble editor to take a look at what came out. All right, so here's the final result from Bubble's AI tool. You can see we're on the index page here. There's a bunch of elements that were created. If we go to the database, it looks like they created two new data types for an appointment and an available slot, and it filled the dev database with some dummy data here, which is nice. If I go to the design tab and just preview this app, this is what we see. There's obviously a lot of work to be done here to make this functional in any way, but that's not the interesting part of this to me. And what I want to do is let's just put a pin in this right now, and we'll jump over to Lovable.dev to see what that platform can do. All right, so here's the result from Lovable.dev, and this works similar to what we just saw with Bubble in the sense that you input a prompt, it's going to spin up some code for you. They use React. And it looks like you can integrate with Supabase here if you wanted, or export this code to a GitHub repo. But right out of the gate, in this preview window, it looks pretty good. More aesthetically pleasing, obviously. One thing I noticed is it looks like they got the months wrong, or the dates rather. Each first of the month is on a Sunday, it seems. But if I click on a date, I see time slots available, and if I click on one of those time slots, I see a nice little form pop up where I can enter my name and email, which is pretty great. I think it did a nice job with this. But let's pause here for a second, because I think, for me at least, the more interesting question is not how did each of these tools do right out of the box, but what if they had done really well? What if they had completed this prompt perfectly? And what would that look like? It's kind of weird to imagine. Let's take that question and go back to Bubble for a second. So if you were to imagine building an interface like Calendly, and I'm sure that many, if not all of you, have seen what a Calendly booking system looks like, where you go to the page, you select an available date, you have to show which days are available and which are not on that first calendar. To build anything close to that in Bubble, what would that look like? That's a really challenging feature for advanced bubblers too. And typically what you would need to do is you would download the Toolbox plugin, you'd hack together some JavaScript for generating a dynamic list of dates, and you can do it, you can get it to work, but you often have to, for problems like this, build these really hacky solutions that are hard to maintain to get the thing to work, because you have to work around Bubble's limitations. So you can imagine an AI, that would just be an incredibly difficult task for an AI to do. And to do this right, like what? Is the AI going to go download the Toolbox plugin, write the JavaScript code for you inside of a run JavaScript action or the expression element or whatever it is? And then are you going to have to, if you want to make any changes, still work inside of the expression element or inside of whatever it is, but with this hacky kind of hard to maintain code that's really hard to make changes to. So that's kind of the point I'm trying to make with Bubble here is like, what would a perfect solution like this look like? If you were even trying to build this yourself from scratch, the end result is inevitably going to be something that's kind of janky and hard to maintain, right? Like, I think Bubble, one of their great strengths over the years has been, and one of the things that makes their platform great and really easy to work with, is they've abstracted away a lot of the challenges that come with full stack development. So you don't really need to worry about database management for the most part. Yes, you're in charge of your own data and setting up your schemas and stuff like that. But for the most part, you don't really have to worry about database management. You don't really have to worry about authentication or deployment or scaling. They kind of handle the complexity of all of those things just inside their own platform, right? And so as long as you stay inside of their little box here, everything works reasonably well until you get to some of those more difficult features that kind of push on the boundaries of this little box that all Bubble developers live in. And if you've built anything just remotely complex in Bubble, you'll know what I'm talking about with this. Now, the problem with AI in Bubble's case, as far as I see it, is that this tool that they're building, this AI, is still going to be stuck within the constraints of this box here, right? And as long as there are constraints on Bubble's system inside of this closed box, as long as we still have to kind of hack together solutions for doing different things that should be much easier to do and that are very commonly needed inside of building any sort of complex application, I think this AI is going to struggle, right? So jumping back into Lovable, I see kind of a similar problem to the one that we just described. And it's not just Lovable. There's a number of these tools that are popping up right now. I know that Bolt is another popular one that people are using, but this kind of suffers from the same problem as far as I'm concerned, because when you type in a prompt and it's going to spin up this prototype for you, what you're getting the AI to do is make some really fundamental decisions about how your code base is structured, what languages you're going to use in the first place. And while they can spin up some really neat looking interfaces like this in a few seconds, and it is in and of itself absolutely incredible, I've found that with all of these, I end up going back to the basics and really scrapping a lot of the decisions they make. Maybe I don't want to use React for my project. Maybe React is not the best tool and that I should use something else. Maybe I don't want to use Supabase. And yes, these platforms can add more and more integrations, but fundamentally at its core, I think that any sort of closed system like this, even if it is writing code for you, is going to ultimately suffer from the same problem. So anyways, that's my hot take on where we're at with no code right now. And I think the whole no code movement and what no code means has certainly been flipped on its head in the past few years as AI has advanced and as these new tools have popped up. I also don't think that this is not to say that there won't be a place for Bubble or for any of these new AI tools that are their own closed systems. I think, for example, I'm using a tool called V0, I think from Vercel, which is essentially the same as Lovable, it looks like almost, where you're typing in prompts and it's spinning up previews for you and writing that code. I think that works great for me as a design prototyping tool right now. And I think Bubble is still great at a lot of things, and you can still do a lot of things inside of Bubble really fast. And for more complex web applications, what I do think is the future, at least what has been working really well for me, is working inside of something like Cursor or any sort of code editor where you have these AI assistants in there, and you can really just go back and forth with this AI tool and still see the changes that it's making at each step of the way and have a little bit more control over what technologies you want to use, how you're structuring your code base, and things like that. For me, that so far has been one, just like a really enjoyable way to program. I feel like I'm just learning a ton, and it's also, I think, just having that full control, I think, is ultimately going to be the future of how we use these AI tools. But anyways, I'm making predictions now, and making predictions is probably pretty stupid. I'm curious to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.